Yes, it's a marker where not everything's walking out the door, and sometimes you got to change. You got to change your strategy and try more tactics. We're going to talk about the tale of a sale on a property where the first buyer fell out, the second buyer fell out, and the third buyer went for gold. Stay tuned for the story of a DY unit selling. Oh,
Oh, he's
good
back.
morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Josh Wapshot, real estate extraordinaire, aka The Economist. Mark Novak, real estate agent of 30 odd years. And we want to talk about some experience and strategy that we applied to this particular sale. The address, Josh?
316/7 Maramba Road, DY.
Yes.
Yep. Beautiful.
This was interesting. Tell us about the unit.
Yeah, so this unit here was beautiful northwest facing. It was a little bit unconventional. It was actually a one bedder that had been converted into a two bedder. Basically, they'd changed a bit of the balcony area to become a second bedroom. All OC approved, done by Strata, so it was all done in good order. But yeah, a bit of a different floor plan, but very light. And then a garage space downstairs where you were limited for height, but about a 43 square garage. So a bit of an interesting one, but it definitely got the attention of a few buyers. And then I believe the Mr. Market, or what everyone's hearing every night they go home and turn on the telly, gave a few buyers some nervous Nellies. Yeah, definitely. A few nervous Nellies, but all in all, considering the market and having three buyers lined up, we were done in about 5 inspections. So, about 23 odd days on market. It's about the average at the moment, or a little bit under the average, but still a compelling push to the finish line, and probably even more so just highlights the importance of, even when a property goes under contract under a 5-day cool off, continue to show the property. Because nothing is secured until you've got that unconditional exchange. So a bit of a brief on the property there, Mark.
Yeah, so the first one, so this was interesting because the owner said, look, not really keen on spending any money. If you can rent it. If you can sell it, sell it. So didn't want to invest in realestate.com.au, which is $4,500 just to go on their website. And he said, look, just see how you go. And it was quite a experienced seller, older gentleman, and sort of knew what he was doing. Now, very quickly, we had an offer accepted, and I think that was circa 880 at the first offer.
Correct.
I think we were a little bit surprised when we rung up and submitted the offer, and he said done.
Yeah, no,
we were like, we were like, okay, let's do this. And it was quite smart because that's exactly where market was. He didn't want to muck around. And then we got mucked around a little bit by the buyer. So with funding and stuff like that, and then lost a week, still continued to open the property for sale. And it leaves you scratching your head, doesn't it, Josh?
It does. But I think what really matters in this environment, if you've got only one buyer on a property, you're going to be dragging your feet to exchange. The only thing I've found in the marketplace currently that is pushing buyers to sign on the dotted line is competition. And I think one of the biggest adjustments we made during this campaign was we were originally guiding that 895 mark. We gave our advice back to the vendor, and the vendor said, you guys are the experts, let's go down to 845 guide. Within the next week, we had another offer at that 880 mark that had been worked up to that 880 mark, where the buyer had seen value, and there was a traditional two bedder in the block that had sold for roughly $10,000 more. So once relaying this information back to the owner, we were back on board at 880. So I just want to stress for people watching or are looking to sell coming online, it is so important in this marketplace to have a guide at a level where the market sees value, because then you're going to have the opportunity of not just the one buyer negotiating when you're working on your property. And like I said, when you're working with that one buyer, they seem to be putting their foot down in terms of terms and what they're willing to push. The only time I've seen buyers really jump over each other in this market is when there's competition. So as soon as we lowered that guide, open numbers went straight to about a 5 groups through on the Wednesday. That buyer actually came through for another look on that Wednesday, saw the amount of heads coming through, saw the conversations I was having with buyers there, and that was enough for them to sort of feel the confidence to go, let's lock this thing down. So I think definitely watching that, raw marketplace activity, very important to have attractive guides. Not saying, nowhere near, saying or comparing to an underquoting scenario. I'm saying guides that where the market sees value.
10%. Yeah,
exactly.
It's probably the hardest conversation I've got to have as a real estate agent with a seller. Is setting of price. I quite enjoy the conversation, but it's a hard conversation, and I think it's as a seller, it seems to be putting sellers in an uncomfortable position where they're like, do you know what I mean? I don't really want to put that price on it. It's less than what I'll actually accept. But at the same time, you sort of got to kill the competition, and you've got to, on face value, be the best, look the best, feel the best. Even from a basic online inquiry, when a purchaser's just looking at the property, they got to go, it's got to be really exciting in every aspect, in photography, in floor plan, in pricing, which is, the real big one today. Now, it didn't even go to this. There was 3 buyers. There was 2 buyers that missed out. So it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. So another buyer came in, at the point of getting accepted with the second buyer, and offered a little bit, and no one knew who was offering what. We don't release the offers made to the purchasers. That's private. That offer made between the vendor and the purchaser. But with where they saw knowledge, it was actually where they saw value was actually at a higher point than where the other buyer saw value. So they offered a little bit more. But then they weren't happy with the strata, Josh.
Yeah, no, it was that as well. And actually a little bit of a funding issue for these guys as well. These guys were first home buyers. And to give you guys the back end of the story, essentially we had offer accepted, came in with an inquiry. The property was vacant. Whenever I've got a property for sale and it's vacant, if I've got an opportunity to take a buyer straight to the property while it's hot, I do so. And that's what happened in this scenario. So buyer made an inquiry, took him straight over that afternoon. This looks great. Where do I sign? So we went through the process. Obviously in this market, a buyer that's, given that offer, given solicitors details, working through a contract, you also don't want to gamble with that buyer either, in terms of, unless you've got something really solid coming in, you don't want to disrupt the flow of that deal. So basically this buyer came in, said he loved it, made the offer in writing. I said, look, for the peace of mind of my vendor, I'd need a 66W tomorrow morning from your conveyancer. We're quite to the end of the negotiations with the current purchaser. So, you really need to put your best foot forward and give my vendor the security they need. The previous buyer was opting for a 5-day cool off. So this guy actually came in with a 66W the next morning with his solicitor. And we were talking up until about 5:30 p.m. the next day. The wife came and had a look at 5:45. Josh looks great. They're at the bank waiting to put the deposit in, and all of a sudden a bit of radio silence. And then 7:30, 8 o'clock that night, hey Josh, we haven't got the unconditional in place, or we haven't got the budget if there is any future spend in regards to the strata. we're going to have to be out in this scenario. And then obviously,
it's interesting, Josh, because I know you say it casually, but this is the work of an experienced agent, an experienced agency, where not every chef can have five saucepans running red hot at once. Do you know what I mean? And they'll, some will say, let's just do one saucepan, one dish, one saucepan, and just cook sequentially behind each other. But I think a great agent is actually doing that with buyers. With total transparency, by the way, I think it really sucks when buyers get screwed without their knowledge. Like they're running on a property, they're spending money on a property, they lose the property, and they say, what the hell happened there? A good chef, or has total transparency with all the dishes. Now with all the prospective buyers. So we're communicating to buyers, look, there's other interest in the property. There's another offer that's been made. We need you to we're in a little bit of haste. We need you to move on. And then that same thing is, while at the same time that chef is getting instructions from the seller all the time onto how that's how they want to handle the transaction. How do they want to handle the transaction? They're getting instructions all of the time. So often, the way that sometimes we are governed to deal with a deal of selling is instructed by an owner. They say, this is how we want you to deal with my prospective buyers. So, it's not that what I'm saying sometimes is don't shoot the messenger. That, you will get sometimes, but I think a good agent is really well communicating, like you are on this. What's the measure? If you ring the two buyers that missed out, they would say Josh is a good agent, rather than him, screw that agent, I just got screwed. And the one common denominator is great communication between the seller and the buyers.
Definitely, I think that's number one, Mark. If you set the ground, you lay the land, so to speak, with the buyers up front, and you give them that communication that's live as things are progressing, you're not going to have those uncomfortable conversations. At the end of the day, they don't understand you work for the vendor, and property's not sold until it's exchanged. Best offer and terms that suits the vendor is going to win the business. So that was one of the big things when you've got multiple buyers on a property, especially when they're close to transacting. Number one thing, communication.
And as Lisa said, in the market, you need to list with agents that are getting properties sold. Look, absolutely. If you go to realestate.com.au or domain.com.au and look at sold properties, those guys that have got success right now in this changing market, they're the ones that understand how to give good advice and transact with purchasers and with sellers, because some purchasers just need that helping hand and advice and strategy, and some sellers need that strategy and helping hand as well. The great agents are doing that, and that's the sales that are happening.
Definitely. And I think if you've built that trust with your landlord, where they go, hey, you're the expert in this field, I'll be guided by you. If you've built that trust with your vendor and they see that ability in you, it tends to follow through to the deal in its successes. And this is a prime example of one. 2 weeks in, price adjustment, competitive environment amongst buyers.
Met the market.
Changed. Met the market. Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Mapshot. Everyone, I hope this helped you, particularly if you're selling at the moment or going to be selling. I hope this advice helped you along.
Thanks, Mark. See you guys. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.